Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So today's upload, as you can tell by the title of the video, we'll be talking about the new potential for some storms occurring across the country. And at this time of the year, this is basically what, all is occurring. We just see lots of storms, storm after storm, active pattern, and especially with a La Nina pattern. So really, these storms, as long as they keep happening, I will keep making videos about them. And we do have quite a bit of a threat for these systems. Different solutions, different models, showing all sorts of stuff. I will try giving my best rundown across the United States while keeping it brief. Won't be going over any specific locations, unfortunately. For that, I just can't provide that. You could go to the National Weather Service, which is a really good resource, obviously, and should be your first resource. Before we get into the video, if you guys are new, consider checking out the channel, consider watching the video, and see if it's worthy of a subscription. And if you are a returning member or a returning viewer of this channel, then you could like the video. If you'd like to support, that would be awesome. So thank you so much for that. Let's start off by looking at the European model. This is a very highly regarded model, and often at least for the medium to long range forecasting, it's referred to as the best model. So let's take a glance at it. Notice what we have. First off, I want to show you several features that are consistent with almost all of the four models I'll be showing you. The four main models. We have a clipper to the north that's delivering snow across Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. All models show that, and all models are pretty good agreement about that, and that makes sense. It's going to be occurring tomorrow in the evening, which isn't that far out in terms of timing. So at this point, the models have agreed upon a solution. And notice, as that is occurring, we do see a tropical storm, most likely a hurricane, making its way onshore across the United States into the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, Texas, seeing quite a bit of rain, wind, so definitely a threat. Again, I mentioned this before, I don't want to talk about these type of storms, these hurricanes, because they're life-threatening. Any misinformation I could give out could lead to a significant outcome, and for that, to refer to the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service, and NOAA, and that is your main source. Not YouTube, not even the Weather Channel, National Weather Service, and National Hurricane Center. And yeah, I could talk all about a clipper. That's not life-threatening. This guy over here is. All right, so notice that little clipper moves on through Quebec, turns more a little bit, kind of transitions a little bit more to rain and then snow. But definitely, it's really just does that during the daytime hours or nighttime hours. You can see right there as it moves into Quebec, some pretty heavy snow occurring. So definitely interesting to see. A little bit of rain across the northeast and southern Canada, though really nothing too significant, at least compared to what could come. Notice that we see this tropical storm hang around across portions of the southeast, not do much. While all of that is occurring, we also see a very, very large winter storm. It's a winter storm, I would say. You could see moving across into the northwest, Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and into southwestern British Columbia, southwestern Canada. Really, the whole province of British Columbia will be under for some heavy snow or rain, depending on where you live. And notice this thing is very powerful. This will begin moving on Saturday, so late tomorrow into early Saturday morning, the impacts will be beginning from this storm system. And if you recall, the models actually did a really good job with this. They have been showing the storm arriving at around this time frame for a very long time, and that seems to be the case, even as we got closer to the event. And this is where that beast spawns, utilizing a bit of this guy over here. Notice it weakens seemingly as it moves through the mountains, and that's what a lot of storms do. They do weaken the mountains, do tear them up, and that's why they don't really rely too much on the Pacific, these storms, for big development, but the Gulf Coast. And because the Gulf Coast is open, and we have proof of that because we just saw a large hurricane come through, it explodes pretty quickly. So not only does the actual system intensify, it also develops a pretty strong cold front across the northern United States that extends through Iowa, Nebraska, portions of northern Missouri, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, and this thing becomes a pretty strong powerhouse. The cold front and the actual storm. You can see this thing is spinning at a pretty strong rate, very strong winds across a good portion of the United States. and it's actually unproportionately large compared to the size of this low pressure. While this is a strong storm, it's not massive enough to cause, winds all the way down into Iowa to be strong. But with the help of this high pressure, which again, we often see this in weather, high pressures and low pressures working together to kind of create a really strong avenue of winds, and that's what will be happening across the Dakotas, Minnesota, and the provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Thankfully, the snow is far to the north. Not many folks live up there, but if this were to be further to the south, it would be a bigger threat, since anywhere this snow falls with those type of winds, it will be blizzard conditions, whiteout conditions. So if you do live here, please let me know, because I think that's awesome to have viewers from that far to the north. And secondly, be prepared, because you could be in for some nasty conditions. Notice we have that cold front kind of separate from that system, still remains strong. We also have a new system coming onto the northwest, and the remnants from that tropical storm combine with that cold front and actually give the northeast a pretty nice pounding. It looks as if another storm may be trying to form out of the combination of those two. You can see Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. All those states seeing rain, and including southeastern Canada into much of the majority of this great Canadian cities: Toronto, Montreal, Quebec, Ottawa. Lots of rain is coming towards you, and you can see it just sweeps pretty uniformly across those locations, dropping some pretty heavy rain at times. Thankfully, it's quick moving. Now, let's notice what happens. So you saw that we had that big storm make its way onto the west coast. This one's even bigger than the one that will make its way onto the coast Saturday, but what it does, it has more cold air. Notice there's much more blue. The mountains get pounded with snow, and what that does, it does several things, and the exact details of this are still unknown. But you could see that, for example, the European gives out a little piece of energy, throws it out, and sends it off very quickly, almost like a clipper. Develops into a storm later on, but really doesn't do much for our weather. And while this moisture seemingly just evaporates, what it's actually doing is it got torn apart by the mountains, but the potential, the energy is still there. And what we see is this cold front develop, kind of like this stationary cold front. At least at the beginning it's stationary, and then, sorry about the squeaking chair, by the way, today it's just acting really bad. But you can see that it develops, and it's beginning, it's small, weak, but with the help of the Gulf, you can see it streams up a bunch of moisture, and this thing turns into a very large wave. This is preliminary. The European kind of has been jumping on with solutions of different scenarios, but you can see it shows a pretty significant event across the northeast, while simultaneously forming another pretty large clipper across the United States. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, seeing very heavy snow out of this. Yes, it's far to the north, but it's interesting to see something like that. And with this last frame, notice that we see a high pressure right over here. It has a little bit of cool air with it, so there will be a little bit of cool air, I'm assuming, based off the isobars. And then here we have the avenue of pretty strong winds, so that probably brings in pretty nice warm conditions over here. Just to be curious, let's see if I'm right. Okay, yeah, that seems right about. I'm right. Cooler temperatures here, and then warmer temperatures based off the winds blowing from the south and west. Look at that right there, though. Out in front of that slug of precipitation, look how warm it is, and look how defined that cold front is, or that cooler front. It's still above average behind it, but look how above average it is out in front of it. So that's what the European does. Total precipitation, quite a bit. I wanted to go to total. And notice that few locations seem to get missed out. You can see the plains, the kind of the Midwest. But again, this is jumping from model to model pretty significantly. And what we are confident in is a rainy southeast, a rainy east. I mean, every state across the East Coast is seeing 2 to 3 inches or 4 more. And then in the Northwest, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, even extreme portions of Northern California, Idaho, and Montana all see a pretty good amount of rain. Some of this will be falling as snow. And then you can see southern Canada seeing, again, decent amounts of rain with those clippers. And obviously some of these storms that will be affecting the East Coast as well. Snowfall, pretty high for this time of the year because of how much activity there is going on. Not necessarily because of the abnormally cold air, but just because of how much precipitation there is going to be occurring. And notice, snow, obviously, where that clipper does occur, combined with that blizzard at the beginning, as I mentioned. So this is definitely, could be a hotspot of very heavy precipitation, very heavy snow, 20, 30 inches. We do see a bit across these locations as well. And notice the West just gets absolutely destroyed with heavy snow. Several locations seeing more than 70, 80 inches of snow, which is just hard to imagine. Think about it. 70, 80 inches is about the height of 6, 7 feet, and that is just taller than a person. You'd sink in that snow. So very interesting. And notice the mountains in the U.S. seeing slightly lesser amounts, quite significantly lesser amounts, but definitely a few isolated peaks or locations probably seeing plus 1 to 2 feet of snow. Take a look at the GFS, which is considered the model that is the best, the next substitute of the European model. That's what I like to view it as, and sometimes it does correct itself or is better than the European. Starting off, we have very similar features. There are only a bit of differences between these models at the beginning, and mainly that being the strength of the hurricane or this tropical storm hurricane. We have the Clipper, same location, same track as a European, a little bit less snowy across Quebec with this. Then we have that storm moving in across the northwest. The GFS really does a very, very similar thing with that storm, as do most of the models at this point in time. And what we see is this thing seemingly disappears. This starts spinning up into a pretty strong low pressure, a cold front across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and these two combine to form a larger storm. The GFS doesn't create a separate storm system off the coast like the European, so less rain across the northeast, and it still does include quite a bit of snow across the provinces, except on this website, the cutoff line is a bit further to the south, so we don't see the full extent of that snow. I guess I could go on the North American view, which I will in just a minute, but I just that kind of takes away from the main forecasting area, and which is the U.S. and southern Canada. Notice we see a pretty large storm, and I do always try. I kind of do forget about Mexico most of the time, and that's the fact is from that is there's really you can see there's not much interesting precipitation going on there. We have some mountain precip going on, and obviously quite a bit of influx from the tropics. But really down there, it's kind of like a monsoon-like weather. We either see periods of very dry weather or very active weather. And notice that while we do see that storm push away, we see another one make its way, which the European also indicated. But the GFS has a slightly different layout. You can see it forms a very extended cold front across the United States. And while the European, if you recall, did a little bit different scenario. You can see that it formulated into a band of precipitation seemingly out of nowhere. The GFS kind of does that a bit ahead of time and delivers much more cold air behind it, which allows for the third oncoming storm system to become more of a snowy scenario, which is interesting to see from the GFS. And then we see another storm. So, just very, very active. You can see just it's absolutely pummeling most of the southwestern Canada, northwestern United States. And let me tell you, that's usually what they see with a La Nina pattern, and most likely this trend will continue through much of winter. There obviously will be periods of drier weather, but there will be many, many of these situations where we see 3 to 4 storms in a matter of a week or two. And that really adds up in terms of precip. You could see in many locations seeing 12, 14, 16 inches plus. The GFS has some of the precipitation more widespread across Midwest, less so across the East Coast versus the European, which shows more. Notice across Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, also seeing gracious amounts of rain. And I was going to say snow, and I should say snow because the snow falls pretty heavily. You could see locations seeing, again, similar to the European, 50 plus inches. And it does definitely bring out a bit more snow across the United States, this model, the GFS, than the European. The European keeps a bit further to the north, and that's interesting to say. Though generally you can see southern Canada also seeing snow, and it does bring quite a bit of snow into possibly the Dakotas and Nebraska with that snowstorm that the European ignores. This one doesn't, though. GFS parallel, kind of the secondary GFS model. This only goes out to 240 hours. That's how it works. That's where it cuts off. So still lots and lots of snow across the northwest. A bit different layout, further away from the coast, more inland across kind of the mountains dividing Alberta and British Columbia. And we do see, again, more snow across the United States with the GFS ensembles. And quite a bit of snow across Canada, though definitely a bit more spotty, and this model sometimes has a trouble laying some of this stuff out. I'll show you the rain / precipitation of this model, as that will just give you a better look at what's to come. Notice hurricane, clipper, storm, same thing. It really just this exact, kind of copy and refresh, or copy and paste from each model. Cold front combination of these two storms to form a slug of precip across the northeast. Then we see a storm move through another storm move through the northwest, sends out little clippers, so a bit similar to the European, if you recall. And then it forms that line seemingly out of nowhere, kind of like the European, but it keeps it further away from the coast. And then we do see that storm system that the GFS is also, the regular GFS is hinting at. And again, keeps things very active and very precip filled. The Canadian model, CMC, does show, again, a similar trend. Everything basically stays the same. Active, large storms. But you can see that its midweek storm or early next week storm is a bit more significant and developed further to the south than the rest of the models. So we'll have to see if that actually does occur. And it does formulate a slightly different trend. And we'll have to see if it's kind of catching on to something. Alright, so thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll catch you all guys on the next episode. See ya. Bye.